Negotiation is about leverage. That's what it is. You can't just demand stuff, and that's not a negotiation. To negotiate, you have to have something the other person wants. Got to be able to leverage.
All right, welcome to The Last One Standing. My name's Dominic George. I am joined by my friend and top producing agent, Noelle Hall. How you doing today, Noelle?
Hi.
She is on one of the biggest real estate teams in Ohio, the Easy Sales teams, and she's been a top producing agent all 6 years she's been on that.
Yeah. That's right.
Today, we are going to talk about closing the deal and negotiations. I want to bring up a recent deal that me and you had together because I think this is a good place to start. I'm not going to mention any names. This deal, FHA.
Yep.
You got the buyer under contract.
That's right.
I believe it was $9,000 in seller concessions, if I'm not mistaken.
It was $7,000.
$7,000. Okay. $7,000 in seller concessions.
I wasn't that good, you know what I mean?
$7,000 seller concessions, got under contract, and we had a short appraisal. So I'll let you take it from there, but I just want to say for all those people that are scared about FHA deals and don't think they can get them done, I think this is probably number 3 or 4 this year I've had with you that you're getting.
Yeah.
FHA
Oh,
deals.
yeah. I could get FHA done. I mean, the thing is there's so many agents. Like, let's start with that because the FHA thing, I mean, I hear this all the time. This defeat from agents that you can't get an FHA deal under contract. It's just like, oh, it's just so hard. It is a more challenging thing because we already have limited inventory. FHA is going to limit you a little bit more, but it's possible as long as you are setting a realistic expectation for your client. So if you're setting a realistic expectation for your client that, hey, look, like if you are in a pot of multiple people that are looking to buy a property and you can't go over the asking price and you need to get closing costs, well, I mean, common sense is common sense. 1 + 1 is going to equal 2. Well, they're probably not going to pick that offer. So we have to be more strategic about what we're bidding on. You know, there are things that are going to come to market that are overpriced. There are things that are going to, have some nuances that we can make the FHA deal work. It's just a matter of understanding the loan, understanding the client, managing the client's expectations, and timing the house the right way to get the deal under contract. So it's totally possible. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is absolutely possible. And this deal that you were talking about, the thing is about this market is that people kind of think that if you don't, like you can just demand stuff, right? Like I'm going to put this deal out there. I'm the seller. I want this, I want that. And negotiation is about leverage.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it is. You can't just demand stuff. And that's not a negotiation. To negotiate, you have to have something the other person wants.
Right.
So you got to be able to leverage. So
appraisal came in short here. Everything was rolling along very well. Appraisal came in, was it $11,000 or $12,000 short, right?
It was about $12,000 or something.
$12,000 short, yeah.
Right.
So walk us through, how you negotiated that because this is probably coming up on a lot of people's deals right now.
Oh, goodness. So, well, first and foremost, I mean, one of the things is that the seller, there was such a big difference in appraisal that the seller was like, look, first thing was I'm more willing to negotiate this if you guys could reduce some of these concessions, which we had such a big gap that we were like, all right, now if we get this price down, we don't need all of these concessions the same way, so we can so we worked that out, tried to do our part first, right? So I'm going to say, okay, my leverage is that I tried to do my part and come to the table by giving a little, right? Give and take to get that negotiation done. Well, then I had some sellers that were kind of stuck in the mud and not willing to move forward and thinking that they were going to put this house back on the market, blah, blah, blah. And you really have to be the champion for your clients. So at the very end, before they were, ready to put the house back on the market, even though they had an FHA short appraisal, I had to advocate for my client and throw that last kind of Hail Mary in. And I was able to email the sellers directly, talk to the agent directly. I mean, even though listing agent was struggling to get their clients, I mean, it was actually really funny because when we closed the deal, he said something like, I said, congrats, it was nice working with you. And he said, I didn't do it, you did. I was like, well, can I get some of your paycheck or what's up? I advocated for my client, reminding them that, hey, listen, let me tell you the position that you're putting my buyer in who did their part. My buyer did their part. They did, come to the table halfway by finding a way to reduce these concessions. We, found temporary housing in the meantime because we've had to extend this deal. We've, here's all the things that we've done. And you also have some things that you need to disclose now. And now you have an FHA appraisal. So I had to leverage the fact that FHA appraisal sticks with that property for 6 months, that you're now eliminating FHA and VA buyers
Very
because they can't buy that property for any higher than that. And this is a first time home buyer property 100%. That's the type of neighborhood it was in. You're eliminating all those buyers. You did have some issues come up on inspection that you're now aware of, that if you think I'm not watching to make sure that you redisclose those in the market, you are sadly mistaken. My buyers had to do all of these things. So I am kindly and professionally, but directly asking you to reconsider this because you're making a huge mistake.
You're being a freaking idiot.
You're
not going to sell. You're not going to sell damn property. Just
you're not going to sell this.
Let's come to an agreement and get the deal done.
Correct. We have to come to an agreement. I had to advocate for my client. I had to let the seller know the position and the work that the buyer put in, because I think sometimes that happens too. Is buyers, sellers, they think the other side's doing nothing to get this done. They're just demanding you to lower price, and that's not true. Like, the buyer was doing his part to get things financially set up on his end the best way that he could, but it didn't appraise, and he doesn't have the extra 12 grand to just dump on the table. He doesn't have it. Money doesn't grow on trees, but he did all these other things. And the reality was that seller needed educating. They weren't going to be able to sell that property. So once I kind of laid all that out for them, magically they were kind of reverse selling the house to us. Like, please don't walk away.
Well, yeah, the one part you left out too, and we went above and beyond and tried to do a rebuttal on the appraisal twice.
Yeah, we even did. We did.
And we
even let the seller be heard.
Yeah, we even let the seller be heard. I talked to the seller personally, which never happens on the lending side.
You talked to the seller. So we actually tried to fight to get the appraisal up, which, logically you would think maybe that wouldn't make sense. Like, well, why would you try to get an appraisal up if the buyer's getting it for cheaper? Well, the options are either the buyer doesn't get the house at all because the seller is not going to come down, or we could try to get this up a little bit, bridge this gap, So we took every effort that we could until we had to kind of really lay out the truth for these people. And
we were successful. Especially you did it. You did a lot of hard work on that. So great job. I know we had some happy buyers. And that one turned out well. So I want to talk about this FHA stuff a little bit more, because it drives me a little bit nuts that especially agents, are so scared of FHA.
Yeah.
So explain to me why it's less competitive in terms of the listing agent. Like, are the listing agents just not educated on FHA? Are they telling their buyers, like, oh my God, like, don't take the FHA offer? Like, why is it so hard to get an FHA deal done for a lot of
stigma? I think stigma and miseducation. That's what it's about. People don't really understand. I have agents that, they'll even go into houses and they'll start determining what appraisers are going to call out. Well, the appraiser's definitely going to call out that roof. They're definitely going to call out this. They're definitely going to say that. And then lo and behold, those appraisers go in there and don't call out any of those things. Right. Or sometimes they'll call out something completely we even expect.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Completely off. So it's like they're predetermining what trouble they're going to get into before they even get into it. And I get we have to kind of safeguard our deals to an extent. You have to be prepared for things. But if we are just red taping ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere, obviously. So I think it's really fear and miseducation. And what they don't realize sometimes is that some of these borrowers, they can go, they're putting a 3% down on a conventional loan or 3.5% on FHA, but the FHA rate is better.
Right.
And these agents aren't understanding or able to explain to the seller, like, hey, look, this is not about qualification. This is about, it is financially, it is a better deal to go FHA. Like, for the clients, if we get through the appraisal, if we're getting through the appraisal, like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. You know what I mean? Like, let's make this deal happen for everybody. So it's a lot of fear and miseducation and stigma, and a 3% conventional borrower is not really any stronger necessarily of a borrower than a FHA.
I think it hinges on that appraisal though. Everyone's scared of that appraisal. And I get it. I would say the number one thing called out for FHA appraisals is chipping and peeling paint. That's it. If you don't have chipping and peeling paint, you're probably pretty good, honestly.
You're probably pretty good. Yeah.
I'd like to
think those appraisers get on the roofs all the time, but they really don't.
They don't get on no freaking roofs, dude. They're not climbing up on a freaking ladder to go check the roof. They don't care. It's chipping.
I one time saw an appraiser stick his head into an attic one time.
Yeah, but I've seen that here and there, but rarely are we seeing anything crazy coming back on FHA that.
Really not. No.
Yeah. As long as there's no chipping and peeling paint, you're probably pretty solid.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll get like a handrail or chipping and peeling paint. Yeah. Often gets called out, but sometimes the stuff that agents are thinking is going to get called out. Chimney flashing. And I'm going, what guideline are we looking at that chimney flashing is on the FHA like appraisers list of call outs, So like they're not, we can't be doing appraisers jobs. And we do have to understand that as interest rates go up, FHA is going to become even more appealing.
Right. Yeah. It allows us as lenders to give people more room on the debt to income ratio side.
Right. It
Like,
puts
so
more
somebody
buying power
that-
into the market.
Somebody that was max on conventional, they were right up on that debt to income limit ratio, but now rates went up maybe 1% or
They
so
don't-
since we
right.
pre-approved them.
Doesn't work.
They're in FHA now.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're unqualified. They're just in a
Right.
different product. So again,
Correct.
yeah, just learn how get educated on FHA so
Right.
you could sell it as an agent and negotiate properly.
Right. Well, it's a funny thing too, is that it for some reason agents, FHA and VA are so similar, and really VA often costs a little more for the seller, yet agents are not as afraid of the VA as they are FHA. And I'm
On
like,
VA, actually the sellers don't have to pay anything anymore. They don't have to
Oh.
pay the pest inspection, just so
good
you
for-
know.
I knew that, the pest inspection.
So they don't have to pay anything, and a lot of sellers are under the impression that they have to pick up a bunch of closing costs for a VA buyer, and that is 100% not true.
Right.
And I actually think sometimes a VA buyer is more competitive in situations where they're putting little money down, because if they do like have to bridge an appraisal gap, that they don't have to put any money on the down payment, so they have
Right.
the extra money.
They
to
have
bridge
the
that
extra
gap.
cash. Right.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big things to be able to get an FHA loan accepted from a buying agent standpoint is that you have to be able to understand if you're in especially if you're in a competitive situation. If you're in a non-competitive situation, it's a little easier. It's not always that much easier, but it's easier. You really have to be able to explain the full terms of your offer, speak to your buyer's abilities and qualifications, and understand the house that, like the position of negotiation that you're in. Are you negotiating in a multiple offer situation and negotiating on a house that's been on the market for 75 days or two different negotiations?
Right.
So
Right.
you
I
got
think
to understand that.
Yeah, it's just as important to set your buyer's expectations so you can negotiate on their behalf in an effective way. So another topic that I want to talk about, because you run a ton of investors around.
Yeah.
You're investor heavy, and that running investors takes more negotiation than any other clients. Walk me through some of the stuff that you deal with investors in terms of like putting in offers, setting their expectations, and negotiating on their behalf.
Well, sometimes one of the most difficult things about investment is that getting not only the sellers, but the listing agents to understand how the financing piece works. It really is an education piece. You as a realtor cannot be somebody that just hands it off to the lender and you have no clue as to what's happening on that lending side. Like
Right.
what's happening in banking. And it can't just be like rates are around 8%. It has to be like, you have to understand what some of these like guidelines are, what these lenders are up against, what the full picture looks like, especially in investment, because the challenge is what's happening is that sometimes, especially on these lower priced, I'm saying like under 250 multifamily deals, right? Like, which there's a decent amount of inventory in that world, but some of these sellers are asking for amounts that are too high for what those properties can really finance for, especially if you're looking to value add, which a lot of investors are. Turnkey is not necessarily as appealing. They want to be able to value add and cash out refinance and do all of that. So you have to be able to explain to listing agents, who then have to be able to re-explain it to their sellers, why, if we're financing this deal and you're sitting on the market and we need to finance this deal, why I'm offering you this amount is because this, there's a certain way we have to handle this when it comes to lending,
Right.
it's not necessarily what you're looking for and what this property needs and what the ARV is. Does it make sense? They're not going to be able to finance it. What they're putting down won't make any sense, or they're not going to have the reserves necessary, or they're not going to have, enough for the rehab later if they have to put down a certain amount, or the interest rate is so high that it doesn't financially make sense. So your leverage has to be really being able to, if you're doing a finance deal, cash makes life, a lot easier.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with investment, but like if you're dealing with hard money, or you're dealing with loans, you're dealing with commercial or mixed use. I mean, some of those guidelines, I just had one literally today I mean, we're going forward on a 6-unit building. We're buying a 6-unit for 210. I mean, it's in pretty decent shape. And it's being that it's commercial, what's happening is that the funding source changed their guidelines prior to our approval and no longer want to fund rehabs unless each unit's ARV is $100,000 or more. And this property, ARV is probably $450. We're getting it for $210. We need about $75,000 worth of work. It's a decent deal, but the ARV on each unit it's not a $600,000 property. So that funding is gone. They don't want to be in business on those types of properties. And that puts everybody in a tough situation, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
What do you do now? Because it's not the buyer, it's not the seller, it's the lending. So you have to be able to either renegotiate this or explain this to the seller what we need to do, or it's a totally different ballgame. So dealing with investors is what sellers are asking for, and what lending is doing is kind of struggling to line up right now.
Oh yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I got PTSD with this mic now.
I'll tell you if I can't hear you.
No, investors are, that's a whole different ball game. It's definitely
different ball game.
Yeah. All right. So let's just end with this because we're going a little bit long now.
Okay.
And obviously we like to talk. So
we're chatting.
I want to end on this topic because this is going to be huge with all the NAR stuff coming up. And, buyers are no longer getting a free buyer's agent. Okay. Yeah. Free buyer's agent. Right. So, technically they could still get, the buyer's agent could still get paid from the listing agent, but it's not going to be advertised that way. And you guys have to sign certain disclosures and all this stuff. So what role is negotiation going to play when you are, one, negotiating with a buyer, and then two, negotiating your listings? So just hit on both those topics for me.
Well, I feel that, me as a listing agent, I'm still going to say it's in the seller's best interest to pay for a buyer's agent, at least pay something.
Okay.
You're going to have to be able to, you're really eliminating a lot of buyers or what their financial capabilities are without having them have proper representation. You're asking for a deal. So education on the seller side to give at least something. And buyer side, the negotiation is going to be about the leveraging of your value. How are you, Like if you're going to get them to pay you, they got to see your value. That's going to be your negotiation. Again, it's about leverage, and your leverage is like, why are we paying me? Instead of just dealing with a listing agent directly, you have to be able to explain to them that they're not going to be represented if they're dealing with that listing agent, and they need you to get them from point A to point B, and it is worth the value, So, money is going to come down to a lot of nuts and bolts, the price of the property, how much money they have in the kitty to be able to pay you, but they're going to have to leverage your value and show them that you can do your job. You're going to have to be the last one standing. That's what's going to have to happen.
Yeah. Last. And this is what we're doing here, right? We're making this podcast to help real estate professionals that are the last one standing in this industry because we know everybody's leaving. Everybody's scared of what's coming up. Commissions are getting squeezed. We don't know what's in the future. It seems like every day there's something always attacking the industry. And this was just the most recent thing. And loan officers went through it when our commission got all messed up with the Dodd-Frank Act and all that stuff, where we had to cut our commission on the loan officer side. Now it's happening to the real estate agent.
Now it's happening to the real estate agent.
And it's no longer, and realtors, there's a ton of agents out there, right? A lot of them are leaving the industry now, but a ton came in during COVID.
Yeah.
You were an order taker. You could be anybody. You didn't even know how to negotiate. You didn't even know you didn't even know shit. You really didn't. Like, you didn't have to know any.
You could do 3-4 million in sales on accident.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now, if you're doing, 8 million, like you are, or something like that, you're a professional in the industry. You're really busting your butt. You know what you're doing. But with this new stuff that's coming out, no longer can you go up to a buyer and be like, I'm free.
Yeah, let's go.
Freaking negotiation ever, right?
Like,
right. Like, hey, you don't have to pay for me, but now you have to explain to them, like, if I can't get you money from the sellers, you are going to have to pay my commission. So you're going to slide that thing across the table and say, here's my commission. I'm going to do my best to get it from the sellers, but are you willing to pay my commission if I can't?
You got to have, your leverage is going to have to be like, do you understand what your job is? And can you verbalize that job to make it worth paying you?
And this is the issue that I see coming up, that I don't really know how it's going to play out, but I think you're going to have a lot of people that are going to undercut agents, right? Okay. Like, I'll do it for $100.
I'll do it for $20.
Yeah. So I think that's what we're going to see.
I also
Obviously,
think a lot of those agents, when you start undercutting your value too tremendously, those will also be the agents.
it's a race to the bottom.
It's a race to the bottom. You're the one that's not. You're one of
We
the ones.
see lenders that do it all the time.
I mean, there has to be a level of reasonable, right? Like I think it is reasonable. I mean, you're not going to ask for something outrageous from a buyer that's already struggling financially, or we got to be realistic about the price point. You got to be realistic about the amount the amount of work you're going to have to do on things, So
right.
And you're going to have to be strategic also of, how much time you're spending on things, and knowing that you may not get to your paycheck that easy. So it's going to be all that more important to really understand what your job is and be able to perform. If you want to get paid, you're going to be able to have to do your job. And there's been a lot of people, pardon me, lucky that they were able to kind of fake it for a little while. And I just don't think that's going to be the way that it's going to be able to go forward. I mean, for me, that's okay. I'll figure it out. It'll be a layer of frustration, but what job doesn't have a layer of frustration? But you got to be realistic about that. And if you are not prepared, well, then this may not be for you.
All right. So one piece of advice that you can give agents that are either coming into the industry, new agents, or agents that are maybe struggling to get the business right now, because we know inventory is low. We know rates are high. There's not a ton of buyers out there. Well, there is a lot of buyers. It's not a lot of properties and not a lot of people that want to buy, not a lot of people that are moving. So give me one piece of advice that you would give an agent, just like the best thing that they can do to further their business and to survive in this market.
Further their business, survive in this market.
One thing. Just give me one thing.
You're going to have a strong lender partnership. Somebody
great. And I did not tell you to say that. So
plug. No, I'm just kidding.
No. I mean, we do work well together. I mean, it helps on both sides. And we love having good agents.
You have to understand where your buyers and sellers financially are standing. You now have to ask for your paycheck. Yeah. Your paycheck is going to become a factor. You better have a strong lender partner on the other side that can explain to you what that looks like. And you better make sure that you understand.
Yeah, great. And it obviously means a lot on our end to have strong realtors, because it makes our job much easier. And we can, we can't get deals done. We can't get deals done for, that people that don't want to go out there and work that aren't professionals. And
it's got to be a team. Yeah.
So great. Well, thanks, Noah. I appreciate you. As always, go out there. I know you got a couple hard deals going right now. So good luck, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, cool. Thanks, Tom.
All right. See ya.
Bye.